Hello, I'm very happy to see you again, to meet you again. We have today two very interesting speakers. The first one will be Kilian, and the second one, Katica Kulavkova. She was already to us some time ago. I'm very, very happy to say hello to our president, who will begin again, as always, the presentation of the colloquium today. Thank you very much, Klaus.
Okay, thank you, Violeta. Dear members of the European Academy of Sciences and Arts, welcome again to our lecture series, Arts Meets Science. Once again, I would like to thank our two deans of the class of Arts and the class of Medicine, Violeta Dinescu and Dušan Šuput, for putting together an exciting program. Tonight's program starts with music in the digital age. In general, digital means that information is represented in bits. Bits are the smallest units of information which are represented in the computer technically by two alternative voltages or symbolically by the digits 0 and 1. You can also think of switches that are switched on and off. This creates sequences of zeros and ones, alternative voltages, or switch states, which can in principle be used to encode any information. Does this also apply to music? We experience music as a continuous flow of sounds and not as interrupted sequences of notes. This is why we also speak of analog information, contrary to digital information. Analog information, which is experienced in analogy, therefore analog, in analogy to waves and flow in reality. Our sensory organs of perceptions are analog and not digital. Even the instruments in the concert hall are analog devices, not digital. Digitalization is therefore only a technical approximation on the analog reality we experience. Music is nowadays sometimes being composed specifically for digital electronic devices. We speak of augmented reality, and by this we mean that the analog world of experience is extended by digital devices. And that, by the way, is also true in other fields. For example, in medicine, augmented reality is now being used there by digital instruments for the chirurgy, for in the lab, for example, or in general in the labor world, a very fundamental challenge in the digital age. Now, in the second lecture, we will continue with our analog world of experience, using the example of literature and poetry, language and communication. The perception of speech and language has a profound psychological role. Plato, the philosopher, already emphasizes this by critically highlighting the importance of spoken dialogue over written coding in written language. Using Greek mythology as an example, the author of this second lecture this evening will trace the sensitive connections between our emotional life, the life of our soul, and poetry, myths, and storytelling. What practical consequences can be drawn from these insights for therapeutic approaches in psychology? Obviously, they seem to go far beyond medical psychotherapy in the narrower sense. Here we are back in the analog world of experience. Now I remember over 40 years ago, I once gave a lecture entitled "Can Robots Dream?" As largely digital devices, can robots develop melancholy and trauma? I suppose we will once again experience an exciting evening, and I thank you for your attention.
Thank you so much, Klaus Mainzer, for your inspiring presentation. I'm happy now to invite Kilian Schwoon, our first speaker. He is a composer and professor of electroacoustic composition at the University of Arts in Bremen. After finishing his studies in composition with the famous composer Nikolaus A. Huber and Dirk Rees at the Folkwang University of Arts in Essen, he studied and worked for many years at Centro Temporale in Florence with Luciano Berio, the famous composer of the 20th century. His interest in combining vocal, instrumental, and electronic resources has also led to an intensive activity as a performer, researcher, and developer in the field of live electronics, with a focus on realizing various projects. He's professor of composition at renowned concert venues worldwide. Furthermore, he develops sound installations and has been involved in numerous audiovisual projects, including many collaborations with the choreographer and director Claudia Lichtblau. His compositions have been performed at various international festivals by musicians such as famous Ensemble Modern, Ictus, L'Art pour l'Art, IMEX, Schlag Quartet Köln, and so on. Since 2007, he is a professor of electroacoustic composition at the University of Arts in Bremen. Please, Kilian, thank you for coming.
Yeah. Good evening, everybody. Violeta, thank you so much to you and to Dušan Šuput for the invitation. And thank you to President Mainzer for the wonderful presentation. It's a great pleasure and honor to be here in this online setting, let's say. I will directly start by sharing my slides. Instruments and concert spaces in the digitalized world is actually a fairly extensive title, but of course it's also a pretext for introducing you to some of my works, which combine physical instruments in spaces with digital virtual ones. Nevertheless, I will embed snippets of my works into more generic thoughts, hoping that they will be interesting in the context of this colloquium. I will start with the digits in a way, and specifically also with the root of the term digital, that is digitus, or finger in Latin. Already at the dawn of humanity, our ancestors not only painted animals on cave walls, but they also produced astonishing hand stencils and geometric dot patterns. These images give an idea about the importance of our fingers for grasping reality and shaping it. Using our fingers for pointing or counting always means to separate entities, to divide a continuum. In this sense, the history of humanity is a history of digitalization. This is also true for music, as music of all cultures deals with subdivisions of the sonic continuum. There are discrete phenomena such as scales or rhythmic events precisely separated in time. Especially in Western art music, this way of thinking music has become predominant. Guido di Arezzo's fingers, the famous Guidonian hand, may serve as an icon for illustrating this digital aspect of our musical system. Digital audio technology has enabled us to scrutinize sound and music not only on the macroscopic level of notes, but also on the microscopic level of the smallest vibrations, as illustrated by the separate amplitude values next to Guido's hand. Some composers have used these new possibilities to apply note-like thinking also on these microscopic levels. Others have been fascinated by the non-quantifiable aspects that emerge at this level and were inspired to develop new continuities. I believe that these approaches don't exclude each other. They can be brought together in meaningful ways. This has already been a topic in a piece I wrote in the last millennium. It was somehow a starting point for many things to come. Therefore, I would like to show you a short extract. Oops. A good reason for showing it is also the title, Orpheus and Democritus, which is very adequate for this colloquium between arts and sciences. It's a piece for piano and tape, where the tape is actually a sound file digitally generated by the analysis and resynthesis of piano sounds. After about 1.5 minutes into the piece, there's a zoom into a loud attack of a recorded low piano note. A pointer scans extremely slowly through the very first milliseconds of the sound and then accelerates continuously up to a normal speed. Strange high melodies appear due to the inharmonic quality of the string vibrations just after the hammer attack. The live piano interacts in various ways with the tape. Often, it just guides the listener through the unfamiliar piano-derived textures with small gestures. Maybe you have noticed the tapping gestures on the string at the beginning of the excerpt. The next piece, Pendant le Chatten, focuses on the analysis and resynthesis of alto flute sounds. It's quite similar to the piano piece in that there are flute-like sounds that are generated by adding sine waves in a complex manner. Furthermore, the breathy quality is achieved through filtered noise. The title Pendant de Chatten might be translated as swinging shadows. A shadow-like, very slow melodic line moves slightly irregularly in space on a line of loudspeakers. It evolves continuously. Certain properties like the brightness, the breathiness, and the roughness of sound change very gradually. On a physical instrument, some of these properties can only be switched. For instance, a flutter tone is a binary on-off decision. With digital means, very fine interpolations become possible. In a way, the electronic layer behaves less digital than the real flute. The score layout already gives an idea of the interplay between rather normal flute activities with discrete note events and very continuous processes in the electronics. Let's listen to an excerpt also here. Actually, there is no fixed sound file involved here. The electronic layer is generated in real time. All the processes are pre-programmed, but in a way that allows for adaptation in space and time. It is live electronics, only in a broad sense, as there's no live processing of a flute sound captured by a microphone. Actually, I prefer not amplifying the flute sound so that there is no microphone at all. In bigger halls, it's often unavoidable to reinforce the flute sound a little bit. In both Orpheus und Demokrit and Pendular Schatten, the electronic layers are characterized by slow, non-instrumental gestures. Nevertheless, they are tightly interwoven with the instrumental parts. Thinking in terms of weaving, the title of the next piece could work for all of these pieces. Knotenkunde means knowledge of knots. The difference in this case is that all lines are played by human performers, namely a piano player and two players of MIDI keyboards, and they share similar gestural characteristics. The previous pieces had relied on acoustic models of instruments. The physical appearance of certain sounds had been analyzed in order to resynthesize them, or better, to synthesize sounds with some shared and some different properties. This owes a lot to the research initiated at the oldest centers for computer music in the 1960s and 70s in the United States and in France. Some 20 years later, at these centers, the approach of physical modeling was en vogue. Instead of the acoustic appearance, the mechanics of instrumental sound production are modeled mathematically. For many years, the results were astonishing, but still sounded rather plastic. A breakthrough was achieved by Philippe Guillaume, a piano tuner turned professor of mathematics. His research led to a commercial software product named Pianotech that was first released in 2006. The interface shows some of the possibilities of modifying the physics of a piano. The hammers might be softer or stronger, and they might strike at different positions. Or the acoustic impedance could be changed so that there's less energy loss and the sounds become longer. In my piece, one MIDI keyboard plays a virtual strings with shorter, the other with longer sounds and other modulations too. The real piano is somehow at a crossing point of these models and is perceived in a new way. Here's an excerpt. Why am I interested in such combinations of instruments and electronics? Simply put, I love real instruments, but not so much for their brilliant virtuoso possibilities. Roland Barthes had written about his fascination by the grain of the voice. For him, this grain is, quote, the body in the voice as it sings, the hand as it writes, the limb as it performs. This kind of materiality that we also find in the body interacting with the physical instrument is easily lost in large orchestra pieces. It's more present in solo pieces or small groups that can be emphasized with microphones. On the other hand, I'm interested in freeing sound from the limits of mechanical sound production. All kinds of vibrations, from our brainwaves to cosmic pulses, have musical potential. This is somehow the polarity that characterizes my works. Now, where would I place my mixed music in the continuum between real environments and virtual environments? Paul Milgram and Fumio Kishino have introduced this perspective when discussing visual displays, but actually they are useful for auditory displays too. The composer François Bell has emphasized how for him, quote, categorically, all sound that emanates from a loudspeaker is not a sound like all the rest. There's a sense of virtuality, a consciousness of an illusion. In a way, my pieces are generally mixed reality, blending real physical sound images and virtual model-based ones from loudspeakers. But there's one strong argument for categorizing them as augmented reality. That is my preference for human performances in real spaces such as concert halls. Sometimes private listening can be more intense than public listening, especially with a distracted audience. But when it succeeds, human performance in a concert hall is still an outstanding experience. It is not by chance that people fill concert venues again after the COVID pandemic. The position of the red dot may indicate where many of my works could be located in the reality-virtuality continuum. How can we create blended environments in real concert halls? Here we come to the problem of positioning loudspeakers and controlling the signals sent to them. In another piece, Baskisches Mobile for percussion quartet and electronics, I use a rather standard surround setup with a minimum of 5, preferably more loudspeakers in a horizontal plane around the audience. The percussionists are widely spread over a semicircle, which allows for intense interactions between sounds moving in irregular rotational movements over the ring of loudspeakers, and sounds passed from one percussionist to the other on similar instruments. I also often use loudspeaker setups only on the stage. We are most sensitive in the direction where our ears are headed, so it often makes sense to differentiate the virtual sound images coming from the stage. In Pendende Schatten, that we've heard before, the swinging shadows of the alto flute move over a line of at least 4 adjacent loudspeakers on stage behind the performer. This works well at a short to medium distance. In large halls, at a great distance, these movements get lost. Finally, in Knotenkunde, there's no real movement of sound between the loudspeakers. The system just has to be carefully calibrated in order to give the impression that everything emanates from around the piano. In such a case, it is also important to experiment with the directions in which the loudspeakers point. They do not automatically blend well with the real piano. Sometimes reflections at the ceiling or the walls can also be used in a very targeted way. Now we hear. New possibilities arise nowadays as immersive 3D audio systems become more and more widespread. There's a long history of experimental installations, especially Stockhausen's Kugel Auditorium, a spherical auditorium at the Expo in 1970 in Osaka was an early milestone. Nowadays, this is becoming mainstream, from Dolby Atmos home cinema to the Las Vegas Sphere with its 168,000 loudspeakers. At the University of the Arts in Bremen, we have been fortunate to receive funding for an upgrade of our studios with overhead loudspeakers and an installation of a system with 20 loudspeakers in our concert hall. This image shows our main studio configuration in a software called SpatGri. Here is also a glimpse at our concert hall. The small white loudspeakers all around are very unobtrusive, but remarkably powerful. They cover the whole space well, and we are very happy with the immersive qualities we can achieve with it. These installations and our experimentations with them are part of a digitalization project called We Dig It. Here's a link. You can find more information here if you follow the QR code. Several renowned international guest artists have already explored and demonstrated the potential of the system in workshops and concerts. We are currently planning a small festival in June 2024, where we will showcase various projects by students and colleagues. For this occasion, I am currently working on a piece for harpsichord and electronics that will use the new 3D sound system in our concert hall. It is actually my first piece combining strong, very evident movements of sound in a space with physical modeling. It will feature models of harpsichords which are provided by Pianotech again. Recent versions of Pianotech since 2020 allow to create hybrid sounds. This is a prominent aspect of this piece, as these hybrids are, for example, between a harpsichord and a vibraphone, creating different metallic qualities. Or other hybrids combine a harpsichord with the instrument that has superseded the harpsichord in many ways, namely the modern piano. I will give you a glimpse of this piece with a model replacing the real harpsichord. So-called binaural techniques will give you at least a weak idea of the 3D spatialization. These techniques imitate what happens directly at our ears, therefore it will only work thoroughly with headphones. So if you have them, just a few seconds for taking the headphones maybe, then I'll start this. The title Rokas Kreise is a reference to the famous Flemish family of harpsichord builders, but there's also an asteroid that carries this name. With this piece, I would like to finish this overview of my works. I focused on aspects that could only be achieved through recent digital technology. We are living in times of dangerous mass distraction through digital media, but I hope I could convey some hope that we can use digital technology also in the opposite way. It may help us to focus and strengthen our minds. You will find more information and longer excerpts of these and other pieces on my website. Again, the QR code, and please find some credits and references limited to the very historic ones I quoted explicitly here. Thank you for your attention.
Thank you so much. So much poetry, musical poetry you offered us. And I myself became so curious to listen to the pieces until the end. Thank you so much. We shall discuss your presentation after the presentation of Katica. I would like to send you some greetings from Dušan Šuput. He cannot come today, but that's why I shall present myself also. Katica Kulavkova. She is a poet, essayist, short fiction writer, and cultural theorist. She studied literature at the university in Skopje, and at the Sorbonne in Paris, and at the University of Zagreb. Theory and literature. She's Professor Emeritus of Theory of Literature, Literary Hermeneutics, and Creative Writing. She is also a member of the Macedonian Academy of Science and Arts, the European Academy of Sciences and Arts, and also Vice-President of the International PEN. She is now Chief of the Center of Aerial Linguistics Božidar Vidoevski of the Macedonian Academy of Sciences and Arts. Her first book of poems appeared in 1975, and she has published very many collections of poetry in Macedonian and also 19 other languages, like English, Bulgarian, Croatian, French, Italian, Montenegrin, Polish, Portuguese, Romanian, and so on. 2 books of short fiction, 1 poetry drama, as well as and approximately 55 other books, theoretical monographs, collections of essays, and so on. She has been awarded the most important literary, scientific, and state prizes in her country and abroad. Romanian Writers Association and Albanian PEN, and was named officer in the Order of Arts and Letters by the French government in 2021. She translates also from French. I invite Katica Kulavkova. She will present her lecture shorter than usual because she has a problem with the voice, so we shall have more time for discussion at the end. Thank you very much, Katica.
Thank you. I will share my short presentation. I hope I will. You can see.
We can see. It's okay.
Okay. So I will start. The topic, even to me, is very, very subtle. And I would like to first thank to you for the invitation, and also say that this interesting topic that I propose for the lecture it has no intention to be directly connected with medicine and this kind of sciences, because I'm not at all professional in this field, but the writing and the reading and telling stories and poetry and in the, also interpreting the literary works, it was necessary to know some things from the mythology, also psychotherapy, psychology, etc. So I try to, in this lecture, to present one kind of mosaic of thesis in order to make to promote this idea of story therapy, myth therapy, poetry therapy in subtle and soft way. So aesthetical one, and not directly medical. We know that according Carl Biller and Jacobson, any message has 6, according to me, 7 function. One of them is a psychological one, connected to it, emotive function, and but all function have interconnection in between. With referential, with meta-linguistic one, with conative, etc., etc. So we cannot separate this function from other strictly. But however, there is this kind of aspect and dimension of literature. I would like to stress that I'm speaking about literary genre and work, but generally the generally the therapeutic role of art is cover all types of art. And sometimes it's difficult, for example, to separate them. For example, in poetry, how to separate completely music and language and poetry. you know the myth of Orpheus. We saw also some fragment about Orpheus in the previous lecture. Very interesting. The myth about Orpheus tell us that his music combined with text, with poems, with songs, had a very, very strong effect on people, Argonaut, for example, on animals also, and also on nature, even on the stone, on the river, on the trees, etc., etc. So the music and the poetry together could vitalize the nature and humanity. So this is one very important role of the art. Also, old Hellenic mythology tell us that the gods of health, of art, and Asclepius, Apollo, and Psyche, who is in love with Eros, are connected. It is a kind of circle, which is very important to explain the mystery of art. Even in the prehistoric time, the people were conscious about this very, very important function of the language, especially because, you know, the language gives us illusion that it is completely common, and we govern the language. We know the language, our language, or few languages. So sometimes it's difficult to make a difference between ordinary colloquial language and literary language. Now we are speaking that my thesis is that a literary text have a particular effect on readers, also on writers, also on people who figures, personality who tell us or in the theater perform the literary text. This is in a specific način full of potentially very effective in therapeutic for therapeutic purpose, but also some genre like so-called pre-literary genres like confession, prayer. Some of them are included including in Bible or other sacral books, etc. Can also be used for therapy, for psychotherapy. And some of contemporary psychotherapists used to practice this kind of using of pre-literary text, like also anecdote, but also all types of stories, Zen story, folk story, fairy tale story, etc., etc. That is very interesting because we know that Jung was very deeply involved in this kind of approach with the fairy tale, for example. But also today we have many examples. I will give you one example of one Iranian psychotherapist who uses some stories from Middle East and Eastern stories very successfully. But so I would like first to mention only few examples from poetry in order to tell you that poetry is really the talented, is really the space of and language of full of latent psychological role or very potential type of language, of artistic language, in a sense of therapy. After Orpheus, I mentioned it, who is mythical one. I will mention, for example, some poets from Greece, like Seferis, Yorgos or George Seferis, who has mythical history, a book, a cycle of poems, a lot of poems from, I forgot, sorry. A lot of poems by Jorge Luis Borges. I have here the example of The Other Tiger, but also William Blake has almost the same, one poem with the same title, Tiger, Tiger, Burning Bright, which is well known. Also Constantine Cavafy, who writes on the proto-text of myths, a lot of poems. I took here the short poem King Demetrius. Sylvia Plath, for example, because her poem Daddy is used to make readers to the level of that they understand the very complex relationship between daughter and father, and how useful is sometimes to express these delicate emotions and relations. But when you express them in a literary way or artistic way, they get some other aesthetical dimension. So they separate from the primal reality and tell us much more symbolically than in the everyday life. Also one poem by Atsashopov, one well-known Macedonian poet, whose poem In Silence is touching the paradox between language and silence, saying that sometimes silence could tell us more than words, etc. So I'm sorry. So all these examples will be probably published and sent to you. Here it is Jorge Luis Borges. It was Seferis, very short poem, Mythhistorema, a very metaphysical one. reading this poem, really, our spirit becomes more open and more sensible, and also maybe good poems give us opportunity to feel this effect of joy. I decided to use this term, this expression, effect of joy, because which is very important in order to become more free and more relaxed and more liberated from our stigmas or stress, etc. So has a kind of therapeutic effect, probably autotherapeutic, because it is not something which is led always by some specialist. This is Ato Shopov. This is Robert Grace, whose interest is always on put on the mythical motifs, but this simple poem is can be popular because it tells us something very simple. We know very well that it is not enough to have diamond to be a diamond in a metaphysical and symbolical way. So, but the poetical way to tell this true, open our eyes at the moment. After reading this poem, we feel much better. So the not educative, but the knowledge we take reading the literature or using the artistic works is very efficacious, because it is spontaneous. It is it happens inside our conscious and our soul and our body, even, because we feel much better, which is very interesting. Is this kind of myth therapy and therapy by folk story, as I mentioned a few minutes ago. And I will find it. This Iranian psychotherapist used some folk stories. For example, one of them is a story about Muhammad, and also gives one method of truth, of evident, explicit truth, in order to show that often or generally it's better to tell the truth at the beginning than to enter in the circle of lies and frustration, etc., etc. But the situation is a little bit comic, because when something is completely evident, it is nobody believes. The same. For example, one servant of Muhammad, in order to take him out of the town, put him on his head in a pocket, and on the question, what is it on your head? He said, Muhammad. They thought it is a joke, and he successfully helped Mohammed to went out from the town because if not, his life was under question. The same method and message sent us, for example, Edgar Allan Poe with his story Lost Letter, when he put the letter on the very visible place of the living room, but the policeman is looking in the secret places. We have also one very interesting myth story about Procne and her sister Philomela, who was raped by the Tereus, the Mary of Procne. But after this accident, Tereus cut Philomela's tongue in order to not be able to tell the story to the other people. But Philomela found a solution, and she embroidered the story on a tapestry. This is very, very symbolically myth story, telling us that some story must be said and must be narrated and must be memorated, and it is because the truth about them, the truth they communicate is very important for the other people. We can learn a lot from this kind of myth story or folk story or other story. I will not take your attention and time a lot, but must say that, for example, the 1001 Nights is one of the richest and biggest book proving that narrating stories every night in order to save the life is a very useful and efficacious, and really Scheherazade could save her life narrating story, so to postpone the death or to deny the death from her Mary husband, who was kind of king, but also tyrann one. One contemporary Egypt novelist used the same structure of narrating in his novel, and took Nobel Prize. This is Arabian Nights and Days. And also we know that Decameron is written on the same way. So the storytelling, oral storytelling, not only writing stories, is very efficacious when the life is under question, or there is a dangerous situation. So the function of storytelling can be really important in order to save the life, the freedom, the harmony in the family, in the society, etc., etc. This example with Iranian psychotherapist is important because of the intercultural tolerance. That is also one of dimension of storytelling and of literary stories, because through the stories, different kind of stories, we can understand the other, and understanding the other, understand ourselves better. Then we can do it confronting with the other, or keeping our prejudices and negative stereotypes, etc., etc. So it's very important today to translate stories, and translating stories, we translate other cultures, other mentalities, other experiences, other philosophy, other moral principles. You know, there was a time when literary criticism was against any social function and use of the literature, but basically the art of language, the literature, the literary works concretely can be very, very useful in the sphere of education, of culture, of psychology, of philosophy, of communication, of intercultural dialogue, etc. So this is helpful for our health, our social ability to understand the differences, religious, cultural, linguistic, political, etc. And it's a pity that today the real story are a little bit marginalized. I will finish with one very, very interesting example about virtual stories. Recently, I read the novel by Burhan Sönmez. He is Kurdish by ethnic origin writer from Turkey, living often a long time, I think, in London. However, he published the novel Istanbul, Istanbul, translated also into Macedonian language recently. And in this novel, composed by 4 personages, who narrate every day their own story in Istanbul jail, prison, and show us how it's possible and how efficacious is narration. One of them is especially talented to make virtually an ambience that they have anything they want and need at the moment, in a very, very traumatic underground ambient on the prison. They have nothing, but he virtually prepare the table, gives them the the seat, makes salad, serve them with raki, a lot of, what is it, kind of whiskey, for example, and they
Yes.
start to communicate, and so on this way they passed their jail journey and saved their life.
Thank you very much, Katica.
Okay.
You didn't lose your voice. You announced that you shall speak
Oh.
very shortly. So thank you. We have among us a composer who wrote a whole opera with a storyteller. This is Rami Shakin, the Syrian composer. So we begin now the comments. Please, if I do not see you, I please just begin to comment. We begin now. Who would like to begin? Klaus Mainzer?
I will not be always the first, but
But
perhaps for warming up, and the other people will have time to come up with their comments. I only have a short question to the first speaker, and then a comment to the second speaker. Concerning the first speech, very, very interesting, because I mentioned that already. My introduction, augmented reality is a great topic nowadays in science, robotics, and technology. For example, very practical in medicine, and concerning augmented reality, we have a whole scaling between the classical physical world on the one side, and the other extreme is a total virtual world, and between that there is a scaling of augmented reality nowadays in technology with digital devices which may be incorporated in practical working and so on, in surgery, for example, in medicine. Now my question is, to which degree is this scale between the physical world and the total virtual world realized in music nowadays under a very practical aspect? And my second remark to this nice second talk is only a hint to a prominent example of storytelling as therapy. Perhaps you know that you mentioned in the beginning of your talk C.G. Jung, and the famous psychologist from Zurich, and with his theory of archetypes and so on. And there he had a very prominent patient, and that was one of the most important mathematical physicists in the 20th century. That was Wolfgang Pauli. And it is very strange that Wolfgang Pauli was a very strong and self-proud personality. And he was very critical and analytical. And not only students were afraid of him, but even his colleagues were afraid of him. He was a specialist to destroy great ideas and even sometimes personalities. And his best friend was Werner Heisenberg. Werner Heisenberg was completely contrary character. He was very polite. He was an artist. He was a mathematician and an artist. He was an excellent pianist. And on the other side, Niels Bohr, a very warm personality, communicating personality. But this guy, Wolfgang Pauli, he suffers from a deep depression. And so he needs therapy. Now the therapy of C.G. Jung was storytelling. He gave him a task, namely to write about the dark side of Kepler. You know, Kepler was also mathematical astronomer, but he had a deep dark side. That means he believed in the end in astrology and some strange Platonic cosmography and metaphysical ideas. And he asked him to write a book, typical for a scientist, write a book about these dark side. And that was is nowadays published even. I think it was published after his death because the wife of Wolfgang Pauli was very afraid of this dark side of her husband. And anyway, I think that was a nice and very interesting example that storytelling can help people, even these personalities like Wolfgang Pauli. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Kilian?
Yeah, maybe only briefly about this aspect of technological trends of augmenting the reality of concert spaces. Actually, it is a big trend. There are many composers working on all sorts of digital devices on the concert stage. There are these different aspects of immersive systems, of course. There are also visual projections, robotics, sensor systems. That's, yeah, in my scene, that's all going on. But I think I'm not the only one who still insists that it's nice if people meet in a real space. So actually, most of my colleagues and friends are focusing on that. When I composed these early pieces, for instance, the one for piano and tape, I mean, I would not have thought of the term augmented reality at that time, but it's just now in retrospect that I think it's somehow it has to do with that too, because everything that comes from loudspeakers has some aspect of virtuality, especially in the way that I use these modeling techniques.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you very much. And now I see the composer and musicologist Livia Teodorescu-Ciocana. She would like to tell us something. Please, Livia.
Yes,
Unmute, please.
okay. Hello and congratulations for both speakers. I would like to make a small comment and to raise a question to Professor Kilian Schwoon. I liked very much your works, and I was interested in the idea of continuum. You mentioned the virtual and real space continuum. Maybe we could start with the mental space, real space, and virtual space. And I was thinking about what we composers are doing in music. We are dealing with a sound noise continuum. So this parallel between space continuum and this sound noise continuum maybe could be developed or approached. Another question is, I mean, now is the question. You stated something very interesting for me. You said that you were talking about the second piece, the flute and electronics. Yes, the pendulum, the shuttle. Yeah, and you stated that the tape behaves less digital than the real flute. So I would like you to explain this to me.
Yeah, basically these two ideas or these aspects are very much connected in the sense that I'm interested in exploring continuums or continua in all senses. So, for instance, the one between tone and noise, that's also something very important in my works. So, yeah, the one between physicality and virtuality too. So, and it's also the continuum, for instance, between different time scales. So between the very small and the very big.
Yeah, yeah.
All these things are fascinating for me. And even this aspect of micro and macro time can be explored now in a different way with digital means. I mean, we have these audio editors, we can look at a waveform and we can have a whole symphony that is just 5 centimeters on our screen or something like that. But we can zoom into the smallest milliseconds of it too. That's the continuum. And we can even program that in a way. So what happens here with the flute, for instance, it's starting to, the virtual flute is starting very, very softly with this fluttering. I don't know if it works with the zoom. Probably it's canceling everything. Would be, I mean, the real flutter tone is or nothing. So I don't know if anything arrived, but now with my tongue, I can flutter or not. That's binary. But with the electronics, I can start with a little roughness of sound and increase always a bit more. And then at the end, I'm at a real fluttering sound. That was the main idea there.
Yes, I see. Okay, thank you very much.
You're welcome.
Thank you also very much. Regarding continuous, I would like to ask you something. The pitches are in fact infinite continuum. How do you decide the pitch, your pitches? So are you using a kind of pitch classes? Because it's really very interesting. For example, the pentatony, the proportion of the pentatonic were found feeling by people living on different continents before the communication between continents. How do you explain this first? Because I don't know really a theory about this. And how are you deciding your pitch classes?
Actually, in general, I'm thinking this mostly in terms of filtering a continuum somehow. And one type of filter could be the chromatic scale, something. I'm still working a lot with the 12 tones of the, I mean, in the harpsichord piece, in the end, it's just the well-tempered tuning. But at the same time, getting into the details of the sound, there's also such a lot of inharmonicity and things like that, that I can't even control in detail, or that I don't want to fix on certain microscales or something like that. It's more like an interaction of this not really quantifiable things with very precise filterings of the continuum.
Oh, thank you. And do you have
explain
a kind
something?
of... yeah, I understand what you mean. I mean, it is something else that I was thinking. And you spoke also about, or may I understand that there is also communication between correspondence between macro and micro dimension of your pieces, of your structures?
Yeah, very often, but not in the sense that I really use the same proportions, for instance, at the different scales, but just that yeah, for instance, in the flute piece, there's this extremely slow melody that is formed by the electronic layers, so the pitches are changing very slowly there. But at the same time, there are very fast things going on. So it's always it's also a kind of tension that I like to create in the listener, that sometimes you focus on one level and sometimes on the other, sometimes on the really inner aspects of sound, sometimes on macro levels and so on. And that's something, I mean, I don't have a very deterministic way of thinking about the listener. There must be a lot of freedom involved, but I try to provoke that kind of flexibility of the timescales of perception.
Thank you very much. And I think we could also ask Katica not only because I feel a kind of narrative dimension in your pieces, also because you find there are not abstract titles. You have titles which suggest a story. And I could imagine that you are inviting to be everybody who is listening to a music to become a storyteller. I think this is very important because listening to music is in fact transmitting emotions, and emotions have to do with storytelling and to cure some problems of the soul. Why not?
You know, if we keep all emotions inside us, inside human beings, there will be eruption of unconscious and negative emotions, not only good emotions. So we need to slowly to express them and let them to be externalized, not only internalized. So that's why we need we use language and music, or I appreciate a lot comment of our president of the academy. I would like to say, for example, that one very good psychiatrist, Irvin Yalom from Canada, I think immigrant from Russia, his family, he published a lot of novels and books of stories. One of them, I have it in Serbian and Croatian. One of them is written by his patient, young woman, and himself, because it was the therapy was very slow, and he decided to give her to be obligated to write a kind of a report after every meeting with her therapist. So after 1-2 years, they decided to publish the book under pseudonym, etc. But very, very efficacious method how for this woman, for this patient of Irvin Yalom, to come back, to solve her problems, psychological frustration, kind of stigma, problem, personal problem with erotic problems, etc. But through these stories and reports written every week, they made a book, but at the same time, she became much better in sense of health. So it's possible. For example, 15 years ago, I was writing one cycle of poems under general title of depression. Depression in the morning, early in the morning, at noon, afternoon, in the evening, and in the midnight. And when I wrote all these poems, I realized describing and expressing my melancholy, my soul melancholy, I solve, I think, the problem, because it's very important to open the eyes to us and to reality, and find some harmony in between. Thank you.
Thank you, Katica. And Kilian, what do you think about? Have you ever thought about this aspect, or you just did it because the feeling I have, I think is I'm not the only person who had the feeling that you are telling stories with your music. Did you think about this, or you just did it with your musical instinct?
I mean, reading some stories in these titles is surely that's not a wrong approach, but I think it's more that I'm opening up fields of associations with that, and so many of these aspects. Yeah, I mean, this idea, for instance, of focusing the attention on different time levels, that's a bit against the narration, yeah, or it's like jumping between different narrations on different levels somehow. I mean, of course, there are modern authors who also have aspects of that. The idea that I mentioned at the very end of yeah, new ways of focusing somehow with music and with following different threads in music. Maybe there might be something healing in that. That's something I would not exclude as a perspective in my music too.
Yeah, you collaborated also with the choreographer Claudia Lichtbau. And I imagine that do you have some examples we could see in YouTube or somewhere of how, because also your music suggests also space and imaginary choreography in space. Would be very interesting to see more. I mean, not only to listen.
There's nothing available online directly, and I don't think I should show things without her permission. But actually, she also has a way of choreographing that is, yeah, I mean, there are somehow narrative aspects in there too, but it's a actually, there are very complex constellations of spaces and figures that where you have to find your own threads through it somehow. So that's very akin to my music, I think.
Thank you very much. Look, Christian Kaufmann. Christian Kaufmann would like to comment something.
Yes. I want to say thank you very much for these last thoughts, because I think one of the healing aspects of storytelling is this possibility to switch between levels of time and between places and perspectives. So you can go deeply into one point, feel the relationships at this point of the story, the relationships of this person, but you can also switch to another level, imagine a future or reorganize a past. And I think your comments on music of Kilian Schwoon have again helped me to understand that music has all these possibilities, that you can switch in your perception between time levels, and you can focus on different voices and different sound structures, and see all the relationships, and feel something as a possibility to go into relationships. just very spontaneous. But I want to say thank you for you, Violeta, Dinescu, connecting these ideas and focusing on things which are also very important to me.
Yes, indeed. I am so happy in these 2 lectures today. There is a correspondence. We didn't, me and Dušan, we didn't look for correspondences, but it is so good. I would like now to ask, thank you, Christian, for this commentary. Livia Todorescu-Cioconeag, would you
Yes.
like to tell us something?
Yes, I would
Again.
like to add that you told us the story of the harpsichord with the Rucker's Kreis piece. It is like the history of the timbre of the instrument. So if you made a mixture, electronics and real sounds between the harpsichords and the future piano, it is like in a very subtle way you told us the story of the piano timbre. Yes, and also I would like to say that all your pieces actually they are augmenting not only the space but the timbre. You are working with a hyper timbre, with enhancing and hyper reality of timbre. I think you have a very very interesting imagination on timbre. What do you think? Is it real?
Thank you so much. I mean, it's great to have these interpretations. I'm starting to realize maybe I'm more narrative than I thought. But, I mean,
but in an abstract way, if it's possible.
Why not?
It's wonderful that Livia told it, because Livia wrote also a very interesting book about colors, instrumental colors, and your virtual colors. You could develop this. And Livia Todorescu-Cioconeag has a special notion for this hyper timbre. This is theoretical. She also spoke about this, and she's the initiator of this notion of hyper timbre. And she diagnoses this in your music, which I'm very happy for this. Klaus, would you like to come again? And we can I do not see anybody. Graham Waterhouse, wonderful. Please, Graham, unmute yourself. Unmute in order to listen to you, to hear you. We do not hear you. Unmute. Can you unmute, Mame? I tried to. I have to discover where is Graham here. Graham, can you unmute yourself? Yeah. Ask to unmute. I tried to unmute, but I cannot hear. I don't know why. I make you host, Graham, and I hope I make you host. I hope now. Can you speak? No. It's a pity. I do not hear you. I'm so sorry. Graham, can you speak now? Maybe it's possible to hear this. I call you now and you speak with your...
Can you hear me now? I'm talking now. Can you hear me?
I hope,
you hear me?
Yeah, I put it here. Maybe I hope you're here. So just talk now.
Okay. Hope it's working now. I'm so sorry. I've just got a stupid mobile telephone and I'm a long way from my normal computer. Anyway, of course, it's great to be participating in these highly interesting talks. Just regarding the first speaker, I'm very interested in the interaction of live performing musicians, that's to say musicians who in real time are performing, are making sounds with all the spontaneity and flexibility of time that presupposes, and the use of mechanical sources of sound, for example, pre-recorded sound or sound from loudspeakers, where the music is preordained. So one's basically mixing two forms of time or music in time, that of the spontaneous performer with that of the sound that's been pre-recorded or put together. What the implications are in creating a piece which has interactive connections between the preordained and the spontaneous act of performance.
Thank you. Graham Waterhouse is a composer and a cellist. Kilian, did you listen? Did you hear his question?
Yeah, absolutely.
Please.
Yeah, I mean, I absolutely share this interest, obviously, and I've tried out very many different strategies for. I've tried out very many different strategies for it. Actually, in many pieces, I don't use pre-recorded elements, but I'm not loud enough. Was that for the others?
Graham, you may, because everybody listen to, you shall discover this in the recording, the answer of Kilian.
Yeah, okay.
Because
I can hear you now.
Yeah, okay,
Yeah,
okay,
okay.
good.
Yeah.
Continue, Kilian.
Okay, so I'm trying out different strategies, rarely with really recorded sounds, but often I mean, there are generative elements, let's say, so certain instructions for the computer for producing certain structures, and they are triggered live, or they take some properties of live input. So I try to keep the music relatively free, in the sense that I want to keep it close to I mean, really like this, to a normal performance in a chamber music situation, let's say. So everybody knows what to do in a way, and the computer also knows what to do, but there are very many points of subtle synchronization, of reacting to the space, of mixing in detail, dynamic details, and so on. So things that would not work in a classic tape situation with absolutely fixed elements.
Thank you very much, Kilian. Your words, your question, your commentary are inspiring for all of us, and especially also for the composer between us, Rami Shahin, Torsten Gubatz, Livia Teodorescu, Jokana, and so on. And now I would like Klaus Mainzer, our president, to say the last words of this colloquium, and I thank you so much to be with us. And see you in 2 weeks. Thank you very much.
Also from my side, thank you very much. These evenings are always an exciting experience, I think. Very amazing that some ideas and topics are not planned by the organizers, and then they emerge. And with a very exciting discussion afterwards. So my message would be, or my experience, we should more do relaxed storytelling to one another as a good therapy. Thank you.
Thank you so much. You're so right. And see you again. Stay in contact and all the best for all of you, all of us. Thank you very much.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.